For this painting, I started with a clear vision, something vivid in my mind that I felt compelled to bring to life. The concept was simple, but the execution would be ambitious due to the scale I planned to work at and the number of characters I wanted to include. I began by gathering reference images for each character, then moved on to sketching to work on the composition, eventually settling on a design that looked something like this. In an effort to save some money, I chose to reuse a 24x24 frame that had previously held one of my older paintings. It was a piece I no longer felt connected to, and I thought that this new work might be more deserving of the beautiful frame it had been in. Since I planned to use gouache for this piece, I needed to create a new panel. The original painting was done in oil, and had I chosen to use oils again, I could have simply painted over it. But gouache required a different surface and can't be used over oils. This presented a new challenge. Sourcing watercolor paper at this scale proved to be difficult, so I had to find an alternative. Though I had never used it at such a large scale before, I turned to Daniel Smith's watercolor ground, a surface treatment specifically designed for water-based media. By first applying a strong layer of gesso, then painting over it with the watercolor ground, I created a porous surface suitable for gouache. As you'll later see, this approach came with its own set of drawbacks. With the surface applied, it was easy to draw over the top of the pencil. I didn't want to waste paper doing a graphite transfer, so I freehand sketched my drawing onto the panel using a few guiding lines to help with the placement. As you'll see in the final drawing, I added more details for the characters, and even decided to add several riding the school bus. As you've already noticed, the characters in this scene are mostly birds, specifically the three walking to the bus being storks, with the one in the middle being a shoebill stork, famous for their large bills that they click to make an intimidating sound. I had known about the shoebill stork for quite a while now, but had recently come across a few videos about them online, reigniting my interest in them. With this renewed interest, I thought of this scene, where several storks were making their way to the school bus on their way to school. A simple concept, but something that I thought would be fun and whimsical, substituting children on their way to school with some expressive birds. Lately, I've been pushing myself to create more ambitious works, exploring ways to add detail that truly enhance the piece. With this painting, I wanted to challenge myself even further by incorporating more characters into the scene. Originally, I had imagined the bus windows would be tinted just enough that you couldn't see inside, but as I developed the idea, I saw the opportunity to go bigger. Instead of obscuring the characters, I decided to reveal them, each one adding personality and narrative to the scene. That's when I decided to design the characters inside the bus, including a pelican leaning out the window calling out to the group of storks. Knowing I'd be working with gouache, I anticipated that creating a soft, fluffy sky with clouds would be a unique challenge, especially at this scale. Gouache dries quickly, which makes smooth gradients difficult to achieve over large areas. For this project, I decided to bring out a new tool, the airbrush. I had recently picked one up after doing quite a bit of research on how to use it and what kinds of equipment I'd need. Eventually, I found a seller online who was parting with some quality airbrushing gear, and I jumped on the opportunity. From there, I spent several days practicing how to paint skies, experimenting until I felt confident enough to apply it to the final piece. For this section, I used acrylic instead of gouache, since gouache doesn't layer as well when sprayed. To protect the areas I planned to paint with gouache, I carefully masked them off using masking fluid before starting on the sky. This part of the process was especially fun. It was exciting to experiment with a new medium I've never used before, which offered a rewarding challenge. Through my test runs, I found that starting with deep blues and gradually lightening them towards the horizon helped to create a more natural atmospheric effect. I made sure to leave white spaces for the clouds, which gave them a sense of depth and softness. Once the blues were laid in, I returned with cool grays to add subtle definition and form to the clouds. From there, I moved on to painting the mountains in the background and the water, before transitioning to the midground elements. While it's not always necessary, I prefer to work from the background to the foreground. It helps to establish a sense of depth early on, giving the foreground elements something to layer on top of. The inspiration for the midground came from photos I took during a trip to Bellingham a few years ago. While I shifted the time of day in the final painting, these references were still incredibly helpful in shaping the environment around the bus and grounding the composition. Glazing is a process of applying a thin, translucent layer of darker color over another to shade or tint the underlying surface. With gouache, however, this technique is nearly impossible. Its reactive nature and the high water content required for glazing often lifts the layers underneath. To work around this, I turned to the airbrush once again. I wanted to tint the windows of the bus, and I knew the airbrush would allow me to glaze gently without disturbing the existing paint. The soft application of pigment through the air provided the control and subtlety I needed, something that would have been difficult, if not impossible, to achieve with a brush. With the windows properly tinted, I moved on to the foreground, painting the grass and concrete around the characters. Here I made sure to add subtle variations in the grass while darkening elements as they come forward. Next, I began to work on the bus, and this is where most of the challenges with this painting started to show up. For some reason, the watercolor ground had been applied more thinly in this area, which caused the paint to pool and behave unpredictably on the surface. As a result, I had to repaint certain sections multiple times just to achieve full coverage. Unfortunately, this issue continued across much of the painting, turning what should have been a smooth process into a series of frustrating setbacks. It definitely tested my patience. Despite the setbacks, I kept moving forward, filling in the remaining details on the bus, including a painted name for the bird's school district along the side. While working on this painting, a friend mentioned that the scene feels like it belongs in a children's book. I'd received several comments from friends and family before about different paintings, but this time it was just the right nudge to get me thinking in a new direction. I began to imagine, what would this picture book look like? What would the story be about? Who are these characters and what kind of world do they live in? Since then, the idea has been growing in my mind, and I've been seriously considering turning this into my next creative project. I won't go into too much detail here, but I'd love to make a follow-up video to share more about my ideas and where this might lead. And with the last details in place, I could call this painting complete. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate you spending a little bit of your time with me here today. It really means the world to me. If you're interested in connecting with me in any way or seeing any of my other artwork, I have all my social media accounts linked in the description below, as well as a new Discord community I just opened where we can share and connect about all kinds of artwork. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next video.